Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:07 on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here on a Thursday morning. Chugging along here with a busy itinerary yet ahead. Coming up at 7:05, Scott Parkinson running for Senate in Virginia. 7:35, Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas. 8:05, Link Lauren, who is now working for the Kennedy campaign. And at 8:35, Susan Weiss-Bauer on her new book, The Well-Trained Mind, The Essential Edition, brand new publication of the 1999 classic, The Well-Trained Mind. I'm Larry O'Connor, alongside another 1999 classic, Mercedes Schlapp. Good
1999.
Morning,
Wasn't that song the Prince song?
Yes.
No, what was it?
To be completely honest, you were not born in 1999.
No.
That would make you 25 years old.
No.
But you sort of hit your peak in 99.
How do you know? You didn't even know me in 99.
Yeah, you know,
That's
I'm
so
sorry
not
to do
fair.
a Don Lemon thing on you here, but, you know. Those were your
I'm
best
past
days.
my prime. I do really feel
you're a
past
little
my
bit-
prime.
little past
I
your
totally
prime.
do. I've embraced my old age and very happy, very proud to do so.
Yes, you
Comes with wisdom.
Do we need to get you a little blanket for your lap there? I'm worried that you're going to catch a chill, Grandma. I'm
Okay,
kidding.
Sonny.
I'm actually closer to being a grandpa than you are at this point. This is scary. I have a daughter. Have I mentioned this on the air yet? Can't remember.
I don't know if you're on the air, but
I have a daughter on the brink of being engaged. It's
that
not.
is just, don't jinx it,
The
Larry.
question has not been asked, but my permission has been asked and granted.
Are you traumatized by it? Or are you ready to embrace it?
Yes, no, I am not ready for this at all.
Oh,
I am not ready
you'll
for
get through
any
it.
of my children
We'll
to
help
get
you
married.
get through it, Larry. Don't worry.
I appreciate that. When the actual
Yes.
question is popped, I will let everybody know that my
you're
daughter
secretly
is engaged.
excited. That's fantastic.
I'm not. Meredith is way more excited than I am. Meredith is already like, oh, I can't wait to be a grandma. It's like, could we just have a wedding first?
Let's
for
just
God's
do the
sake?
wedding first.
Meanwhile, your daughters, I mean, they're way too important to have boyfriends, for crying out loud. Actually, one of your daughters.
Yeah,
has a
Kat
beau,
has.
right?
Yeah, he's a really nice
Katerina
guy.
has
But
a
you
beau.
know, it's like
We were
Matt
trying to
says that
marry
he
off
doesn't-
your
we were trying to
Katerina with
marry off.
Christian. Katerina and Christian, I stand by this, would make a great couple.
They would make a great couple.
But
They're both so they're wonderful, wonderful
gonna
kids.
happen.
They really are. But we're being biased. Okay, well, what's going on in the news?
Well, you remember your pal Ronna McDaniel, who is no
Yes.
longer the chairwoman of the RNC, but apparently she had a plan for her post-chair career, at least for 2024. During the presidential election, she was going to be a frequent guest and analyst on NBC News. That included MSNBC. It included Meet the Press, election night coverage, debate night coverage, all the stuff, convention coverage. She'd be fine for that job, I think. She was completely, thrown under the bus by NBC. They
Gaslighted
they
is the word that
her.
Yes.
They demeaned her. They the NBC.
But she is going to make a killing. You know.
Oh,
that,
she
right? Like,
she
she's
has
gonna
one of the
sue them.
best lawsuits
Yes.
laid out for her.
Exactly.
They let their employees malign her and trash her integrity on the air while she was an employee. I mean, you try that with any of your coworkers. It's not going to end well. But the marker was laid down. NBC News said, we have certain standards here about a person's character, their past, their behavior, and we are not going to allow our pristine platform to be sullied by people of that ilk. Which brings us to yesterday, as Ari Melber was doing a program analyzing the latest in the Trump case in New York, where the media constantly calls hush money, which it's not a hush money case. The fact that even conservative outlets use that phrase drives me up the wall. It is a case revolving around a payment for non-disclosure, which is something that is 100% legal. It's not hush money. They're trying to make it sound more nefarious than it is. That said, Ari Melber is doing analysis on this, and he brings on special guest calling in from Terminal Island Prison in California, Michael Avenatti, also known by Tucker Carlson forever as the creepy porn lawyer, who is well beyond just a creepy porn lawyer. He is a convicted felon for actually defrauding his clients, including Stormy Daniels, the woman in question at the center of this current case against Donald Trump. So Ronna McDaniel is not welcome there on the pristine platform of NBC News. But yeah, can you get us the convicted felon creepy porn lawyer, please, for a hit?
I mean, they seriously couldn't find a lawyer to provide legal analysis on MSNBC. I mean, their standards are so high, Larry.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, MSNBC putting on Michael Avenatti. I mean, give me.
You know what?
Insane.
It's even better. He didn't actually dunk on Trump the way they wanted him to dunk on Trump.
Exactly.
The only reason they did this was because they thought they were going to get great, fodder for their rabid Trump derangement syndrome, and it didn't work out that way. Let's listen to a little bit of it, though, because it's good.
Since going to prison, as I mentioned, he has not spoken out in an interview about this case until now. So as this first ever trial of a former president begins next week, which was just reaffirmed, that's scheduled by an appeals court today, as Avenatti is a very newsworthy and legally relevant guest, he is speaking out for the first time.
I love how he's explaining
from prison
this.
On the now historic case he helped ignite.
Historic.
Joining us now by phone is Michael Avenatti, the former lawyer to Stormy Daniels, calling in from the Terminal Island Federal Prison in California. Michael, welcome.
Well, it's good to hear your voice, Ari.
It's good to have you. We have a lot of news to get to. But first, how are you holding up?
How are you holding
up? As Elton John once wrote, I'm still standing, Ari.
Wait.
Can we play the background of that song?
I think if you're in a men's prison, if you're in a men's prison, you might want to refrain from quoting Elton John songs. I'm just saying that might target you.
Look,
for certain.
I think he's had I think he's been transformed. I mean, I think he's been in jail. Now he's like, you know what? I'm with Donald Trump.
Well, let's see. There is redemption for everyone on God's green earth. Perhaps we pray for Michael Avenatti, certainly. But when you're in a men's prison and you say your only response to how you doing is I'm still standing. Why is that? Because after yesterday's shower, it's hard to sit down. What,
My
Michael?
Gosh, Larry!
What exactly are you going for here? As Elton John would say, "Hold me closer, tiny dancer." What is happening?
Stay focused.
All right.
Stay focused.
So let's talk. So let's get to the case.
Some of your lawyering led to the exposure of the evidence in this case.
Your lawyering.
The New York trial now will be Donald Trump's first and possibly only trial this year. How do you assess the strength of the prosecution's case?
Well, I think what I'm about to say is going to surprise a lot of people, and that is that, I think this is the wrong case at the wrong time, Ari. I think that the case is in many ways stale at this juncture. You're talking about conduct that occurred some 8 years ago. I think the fact that it's occurring in state court in New York is a mistake. And I think that when you are going to potentially deprive tens of millions of Americans of their choice for the presidency of the United States, whether we agree with those folks or not, or regardless of what we may think of Donald Trump, I think it's a mistake to do it based on a case of this nature.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're having trouble with our connection now, Michael. We're going to have to cut this interview short.
Larry, can I just say, if you get one call during the week, do you imagine your one call being into MSNBC from prison?
Really funny. What a waste of one call. All right. A little bit more here from Michael Avenatti. So there you go. This is a bad case. You shouldn't deprive people the right to vote for the candidate of their choice on a case this week. It's terrible. He then goes on to criticize Jack Smith in delaying the January 6th charges. And there's more. Avenatti absolutely throws MSNBC under the bus from jail when they wanted the exact opposite, and we're going to relish all of it in just a moment. There's more. You're going to love it.
Later this morning in the Chris Plant Show, Joe Biden tells Netanyahu to stop fighting Hamas, but Joe Biden fails to mention the American hostages still being held. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
Continuing now, Mercedes Schlapp with Michael Avenatti from jail, from prison, convicted, fraudulent, creepy porn lawyer Michael Avenatti trying to give his legal analysis of the Alvin Bragg case against Donald Trump. involving Stormy Daniels. So he says, bad case, don't deprive people of the right to vote on a case this soft. He then goes on to say, as we've been saying, these January 6 charges from Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, there was nothing in this indictment against Donald Trump that they didn't know in March of 2021. Everything here is from the impeachment that failed, by the way. And they could have brought these charges then, but they waited until now. Why? Because it's completely political. It has nothing to do with the law. And Avenatti said, listen, those were the best. If you were going to try to convict Donald Trump, those were the charges. Why did they wait so long?
Potentially deprive tens of millions of Americans of their choice for the presidency of the United States, whether we agree with those folks or not, or regardless of what we may think of Donald Trump. I think it's a mistake to do it based on a case of this nature. I was hoping, frankly, that there would have been less hand-wringing, less bedwetting, and that the January 6th case would have been filed in a more timely manner. There's no excuse or reason as to why that case could not have been brought in 2021.
All right, so he goes on, Ari Melber is like desperate to get him to say something about this case that is going to be, pleasing catnip for his viewers.
Right.
So he says, listen, have you been in touch with Alvin Bragg's office? Have they asked you for testimony here? And do you think that he'll get a conviction? And by the way, spoiler, Michael Avenatti does think there will be a conviction, but listen to his reasoning. He basically says, well, yeah, they'll convict him, but that's because the whole thing is rigged. Listen.
That's right.
And Michael, have you been in touch with D.A. Bragg's office, and what specifically in evidence or logic do you think is wrong with this case?
Well, I'm going to decline to answer as to whether I've been in touch with, either the defense or the DA's office. But
wait, let me real fast. Isn't that interesting?
Interesting.
Ari says, "Have you talked to?"
He was in touch. Yeah.
Have you talked to the DA's office? And he said, "I'll decline to comment whether I've been in touch with the DA or the defense." Do you think that Trump's lawyers have deposed Michael Avenatti in this? Maybe
God only knows. Yeah. Possibly. I mean,
yeah. All right. But listen to his assessment of whether there will be a conviction.
Let me say this in response to the second part of your question. I think the case has a lot of problems. Now, that does not, I don't mean to suggest that means that Trump will not be convicted, because I think he will be convicted because number one, he's a criminal defendant, and in our society, I don't believe the criminal defendants generally get a fair shake. In fact, I think that the percentage of convictions demonstrates that the deck is stacked decidedly against all criminal defendants. Number one. Number two, I don't think that he can get a fair trial in New York. And to the people who claim that, in fact, he can get a fair trial in New York with a New York jury, I would ask them if they were to go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow and find out that the case had been moved to Mississippi or Alabama, would they still think that the trial was going to be fair?
Unbelievable. Isn't that amazing?
Let me tell you, he sounds more reasonable now that he's in prison than when he was out of jail. I mean, crazy. Remember how, like, the ladies of The View, they were just, they just adored Michael Avenatti. And now maybe, who knows? Maybe he has been talking to the defense. Might be interesting.
Who knows? But I just love, the only reason that I love this so much is that it's just a complete and total repudiation of everything MSNBC planned here with their big blockbuster, prison
I don't know who thought. I think that producer at MSNBC who booked Avenatti he's probably been fired. I mean, seriously, they're probably like, right. How can you have gotten this so wrong? But I think the interesting thing is on Michael Cohen, because Michael Cohen is going to be one of the witnesses. And he is horrific. He's a liar, and Avenatti addresses this.
Michael Cohen, right, because who would have thought, after all is said and done, that Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, is the biggest anti-Trump liar of the entire team, and Michael Avenatti is actually giving some sort of clear-eyed legal analysis.
Who's going to tell the story? And the problem is that if the prosecution relies predominantly on Michael Cohen, and, documents don't admit themselves into evidence. I see various legal commentators talk about, well, this is a document case. Well, that may be true to a certain degree, but you've still got to have somebody on the stand that tells the story. And to say that Michael Cohen is a problem witness, would be an understatement. I mean, and look, here's the other issue, Ari. You know, Alina Abba is not going to be trying this case for Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how he got them, but he got real lawyers in this case. And these lawyers know their way around a courtroom. And I think they're going to have an absolute field day with Michael Cohen on the stand.
All right, gratuitous slam on Alina Habba aside, this was just a delicious thing to witness, Mercedes, and I enjoyed it very much.
This is really, I mean, this is, talk about good TV.
Yeah,
I'm all in.
Great.
Maybe he should do like a podcast from the prison. I think this could really work for him.
I want a live
it's
stream.
Like Johnny Cash.
I want to know what, yes, Fulton.
Forget Elton John, do Johnny Cash.
I want the live stream of what happened in the control room as this interview was going down. Because, yeah, he's in prison. They couldn't do a pre-interview to know what he was going to say. And you know the producers are like, what the hell is he saying? This is not what we wanted.
He might be helping Donald Trump.
Pull the plug now. Michael Avenatti.
I love it.
He's just an awful person, though. We can admit. We can agree to that. It's 6:24.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:37 now, chugging along here on a busy Thursday morning. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp, fresh from her trip to Rome, by the way. Coming up later in the program, at 7:05, we're going to check in with Scott Parkinson running for the Senate in Virginia. 7:35, Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas. 8:05, Link Lauren, who has now joined the Kennedy campaign. So we're going to pick his brain about what RFK Jr.'s strategy is. And then at 8:35, Susan Wise Bauer, author of the book The Well-Trained Mind, now with a brand new Essential Edition. Talk about the changes from her 1999 classic. That's all coming up. So yesterday, we've been hoping for some good news on inflation, obviously for multiple reasons. First, because it's just killing us right now and everything costs more than it should. And it's all because of Bidenomics, that is, and the fact that he keeps spending, what are we now, $35 trillion in debt, and they just keep printing new money that we don't have and that our children don't have and that our grandchildren don't have. And that as soon as you keep printing money to pay for government spending, that reduces the value of the dollars that are sitting in your bank right now or in your wallet, and that increases the cost of everything. That's how we get inflation. It's all caused by government policy. It's not a free market phenomenon in any way whatsoever. It's the market reacting to government policies. And it's not getting any better. But most economists thought that things would stabilize this year. At the very least, we weren't going to get a relief, but at least it would stop rising. And if that happened, then we might get some relief with the interest rates from the Fed. They were hoping at one point for 6 reductions in the interest rate. In February, when the inflation numbers came up, they said, okay, well, that ain't going to happen, but maybe we'll have 3 reductions in the interest rate. Now, after yesterday's numbers, probably that's not going to happen either. Here's what's going to happen. You'll get some good numbers and a drop in interest rates 2 months before the election. That's how it'll work. But here's how even MSNBC yesterday report. Well, no, actually, let's start with this. MSNBC yesterday talked to 8 undecided voters specifically about the economy and about inflation. This is after yesterday's consumer price index numbers came in again with an increase in inflation.
I want to show 2 more. The undecided voters were also asked how they think President Biden is doing on the economy. Take a listen.
I think he's been absolutely disastrous for the economy.
I agree.
Raise your hand if you think President Trump's policies on the economy would be better for your family personally. Raise your hand. All right, so that is everybody. President Biden argues that his economic record has been very good. He said President Trump's was not as good. What are you keying off of, Sean? Since you had the best smile in Virginia, the second best smile. What are you keying off of to say President Trump's economic policies would be better for you?
My past performance of my 401k. I know it was post 2020 and everything kind of flipped around, but you can't blame everything on 2020 for forever.
We have areas here in Pennsylvania where it's just at a standstill right now. Like things are supposed to be being built and the interest rates are just way too high for people to invest and start moving around.
By the way, it was just 3 days ago that Pete Buttigieg, with his smug little smart aleck face, was sitting on a morning show on Sunday morning saying, I don't think Joe Biden gets enough credit for how good the economy is right now. You know, you've got this vast right-wing conspiracy of conservative media outlets that are always talking down the economy. Well, I guess you add Morning Joe and Mika Brzezinski and MSNBC to the vast right-wing conspiracy here. Yesterday's numbers showed that inflation is now up year over year 3.5%. And you're going to have idiots like Pete Buttigieg trying to tell you, well, you know, in 2021, the inflation was 7%, so we've cut that in half. That is such a lie. That's not how inflation works. Genius, Mr. Einstein. First of all, the 7% inflation that we were suffering under is also a direct result of Joe Biden's policies. At the time, the people in the administration like Pete Buttigieg and the Treasury Secretary and Jen Psaki said, oh, this is a temporary blip. It's not sustaining. It's just a little anomaly. Don't worry. This isn't real. Even Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, has admitted that they were wrong about that this is 3 years of unstoppable inflation. And 3.5% year over year right now is not a 50% reduction from the 7% inflation that we had 3 years ago. No, it's added on top of the 7%. Every month you have a growth in inflation, no matter how big or small that number is, it stacks on top of the inflation you've already been experiencing. And that's how bad things are right now. Biden yesterday was asked about this. And by the way, every single question and answer from Joe Biden's joint press conference with the Prime Minister of Japan was written out on a cue card. He knew every reporter he was supposed to call on. He knew what question they were going to ask. It was prearranged. And he answered each question from reading on a cue card. We know this because he was wearing his dark Ray-Bans to cover up the fact that he'd been shot up with Adderall before he went to the podium, because you can always see it in his eyes. And the reflection of the note cards were seen in his Ray-Bans.
Last month, you predicted the Federal Reserve would cut interest rates thanks to falling inflation. But today, data showed that inflation rose more than expected for the third straight month. So how concerned are you about the fight against inflation stalling? And do you stand by your prediction for a rate cut?
Well, I do stand by my prediction that before the year is out, there'll be a rate cut. This may delay it a month or so. I'm not sure of that. We don't know what the Fed is going to do for certain. But look, we have dramatically reduced inflation from 9% down to close to 3%. We're in a situation where we're better situated than we were when we took office, where inflation was skyrocketing. And we have a plan to deal with it, whereas my opposition talks about two things. They just want to cut taxes for the wealthy and raise taxes on other people.
Oh, God. He's just right back where he was with his old playbook. But don't buy this lie. We've reduced inflation from 9% to 3.5%. A 3.5% growth is on top of where we already were. That's not a reduction in any way whatsoever. You have to be Joe Biden to believe that. It's 6:49 now. Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp. Mercedes, your pal Alejandro Mayorkas.
My pal?
Yeah.
Wow, you're my pal, not Alejandro. Just because he's a Hispanic doesn't mean you have to put us all in
you guys knew each other.
Group.
Figured you all have, you're all members of the same club.
Our own tribe.
Yeah,
is that
exactly.
what you're trying to say? Just one Latinx is the same as the other Latinx?
Latinx. He said something on Capitol Hill yesterday under oath that in 3 years he's never said. Listen.
Would you call it a crisis at the southern border?
Yes, I would. And as a matter of fact, I work every single day with the men and women in the Department of Homeland Security to only strengthen the security of our southern border as well as the northern border.
Up until this point, he has never called it a crisis. In fact, he has repeatedly said that the border is secure. and everything down there is happening in an orderly and legal fashion. So do you think that takes the heat off? Do you think finally the fact that he got impeached for his lies under oath and his failure to secure the border, is that what's brought him to this place? Is this just presidential year politics? What do you think?
No, I mean, the mere fact that it took him so long. I think the American people want transparency. They want to know, like, we have a problem, we got to address the problem. And the problem with the Biden administration is they do this. Their tactic has been everything is fine.
Yeah.
The economy is fine. Inflation, not a big deal. The border, it's fine. And I got to tell you, this is why you've seen the shift with these voters where all of a sudden they're saying immigration is a top issue.
Mm-hmm.
We don't feel secure. There was just a report that over 125,000 illegal immigrants came through the border into the area of San Diego in the last 6 months without proper vetting. They're not even vetting these individuals,
Of course
Larry.
they're not.
So
Yeah.
it is beyond a crisis. It is a national security crisis. It's a humanitarian crisis. And I think for Mayorkas, I don't even know how the guy still has a job, for crying out loud.
But because he's actually doing exactly what Biden and the Democrats have wanted him to do. This is all part of their plan, I think. Also, though, because it's an election year, he needs to act like or say that he's doing something. On Univision on Tuesday night, Joe Biden said that he's considering taking executive actions on the border. But here's the interesting thing about that. First of all, he knows he can take. What do you mean considering? If you want to fix the problem,
examining. He used the word, I think, examining.
Yet here's the thing: he knows very well the executive actions that he can take that will secure the border, because all he has to do is rip up those executive orders that he signed on day one that reversed President Trump's executive actions on the border. Here's my favorite part of this whole thing: the new narrative that Biden's now examining what he can do on the border from the executive branch. In January, he was asked, what can you do on the border? And he said, and I'm quoting him now, I've done all I can do to secure this.
Wow.
So in January, he said, no, I can't do anything else. I've done everything I can do. I need Congress after this. And now the new narrative in April is he's now examining what further actions he can take. But this is all about getting votes. And it's
Well, look, he is facing a political storm right now, which is you've got those members from the Congressional Hispanic Caucus that are Democrats who obviously don't want, and the liberal base saying they don't want action on the border. This is for them. It's about bringing in migrants illegally, and they're fine with it. They do not have a problem with this issue at all.
Right.
They are, and then the other side of this, which is the pressure of the fact that we have no idea who's coming in through the border. We do know that there's criminals that have been let loose from the country of Venezuela who are literally coming through the border easily and setting up shop here and committing crimes. And you've got Chinese nationals also coming, and you've got individuals coming from over 150 countries. It is unsustainable. We cannot continue down this path. And so for him saying we're examining potential executive action, come on. He has right now the right to do this. Move forward. He has the authority to do this under the Immigration and Nationality Act, and he won't act because he's so scared that the liberal base is going to be mad at him.
Well, yeah.
And he's not putting America first. He's not putting our national security first, and he's putting our communities in danger.
Right. And he will act. He's going to do something. It's probably come in July or August, and it won't get implemented until after the election. And by that time, he will have reversed it. Or at that point, Kamala Harris will take over and she'll reverse it. They don't want to fix anything on the border. They just want you to think that they care.